Maybe he got a haircut since last time, which means I should hold him up again.
Sure.
I'm not sure if the haircut. Hey, Milo, show them how you look even weirder with a haircut. He looks like a Star Wars character. So there's bombs, there's caravan.
Yeah, both of those stories put me in a like conspiratorial mood.
Yeah, me too. So on the bomb one, so these things that seem like they actually are bombs, but are very crude, and so crude that although they sent them to a bunch of people, nobody was hurt, even though some of them were probably opened by not like professional mail screeners. I mean, some were, like the Clintons' mail is all dealt with very carefully, Bill and Hillary. But
some actually got to like the recipients.
Oh, I think. Well, what I mean is like they sent one to like Robert De Niro's restaurant, a restaurant owned by Robert De Niro, I think, and it's like maybe they have a mail screener, but I don't know. It just like they sent a bunch of these out, none of them actually exploded. So you wonder, is it somebody super inept, or is it the case that, as people on the right are alleging, it's a so-called false flag operation done by someone on the left to make it look like it's someone on the right? I don't rule that out. It's a pretty weird thing, and there's like apparently I saw some reference to some kind of right-wing meme like icon on the bomb, like it's some kind of parody of ISIS's flag or something, the Islamic State's flag. This could be wrong. I just saw it one place, but a number of things suggest like it's not somebody who really wanted to kill. So if you really want to kill someone on the left, I might focus on like one or two people and just spend more time on the bomb itself and do a good job of that, rather than spend a ton of people something that apparently is incapable of detonation. I don't know.
Are there other theories apart from the false flag attack? Is it like somebody trying to threaten all these people?
Oh, sure. I mean, it could be somebody from the right. Now, we should say, I mean, by the time, as we tape this, no one has a clue. It wouldn't surprise me at all if they catch somebody, because this doesn't have the hallmarks of tremendous sophistication.
Right.
On the other hand, it took them forever to even, I think they finally settled on a suspect for the Anthrax attacks, but it took them forever. And that was a similar thing of sending stuff through the mail.
This is an aside, but that's also not how you buy drugs in Russia, but how you buy drugs in America. I was very impressed with how easy it is to just order things from the dark web and get drugs in the mail.
Yeah, although if you get caught, I would assume that subjects you to federal law in a way that it might not if I have no idea. But I will say this. The mailbox from which all of the anthrax was sent is about 1.5 miles from where I am now, but I was not involved.
What do you think are going to be the consequences of this?
Well, I mean, politically, it's a good question. I almost think, I mean, it depends. I mean, if it turns out to be a person from the right, I almost don't think it's going to have huge consequences like on the midterm elections. I think the caravan is more, well, explosive, if you'll pardon the pun, politically than the bombs. But I think if it really is a person from the right, especially if it's somebody from the right who sent the bombs, it does raise the question of actual civil conflict. I mean, you are hearing the term civil war more,
right? As
we've said, usually not in a completely serious way. And I don't think America is structured in such a way that I don't think, you're going to see like classic civil war, certainly anytime soon. I mean, a friend of mine said he thinks Americans are too lazy to have a civil war, and that would be good news. But it raised the question, like, how ugly could this get? I know a lot of people now who are like more and more saying, like, when does this stop? Because the dynamics of the polarization are like self-reinforcing, and it's not clear what what halts the process, like huge comment. I mean, somebody I know, Ian Bremmer tweeted that, 9/11 brought the country together, but right now he thinks a 9/11 wouldn't do it. And I mean, not that you would want that to be the way it was done anyway, but the point is he thinks it's to a point where it's not that easy to imagine the kind of external threat. Because I think it's a good point, because like if a 9/11 happened in the current environment, it's hard to say, but I think there are things that could happen, like on the terrorism front, that previously might have brought the country together that would just be the occasion for more left-right finger pointing.
Yeah.
This is your fault. No, it's your fault.
Yeah, I feel that, to me, it seems that the only way out is some sort of reconfiguration of these tribal divides. So you have the right and the left now, and there are these two sides, and they hate each other and they blame each other for everything else. And it's not like you'll get to a point where there are no teams like that, no tribes like that. But if there's some reshuffling of that, if a part of the right and a part of the left will align themselves with some new team or whatever ideology, there's some new focal point, maybe a presidential candidate that's outside of the usual divide.
The funny thing is, Trump was supposed to be that. I mean, of course, Trump is himself just an almost inherently incendiary figure. I mean, just the kind of rhetoric he uses is just much less civil than any president in my lifetime. I mean, I wasn't alive when Andrew Jackson was president, but but I mean, as a political matter, Trump was supposed to redraw the political map, and he hasn't done that as much as he might. He seemed to be appealing to like the working class, which he was, but he has kind of kept that confined to the white working class in a way that wasn't totally predictable. I mean, in other words, like Bannon wanted like tax increases on the rich. See, Trump, once he got in office, he bought most of the Republican establishment agenda on domestic policy and even like largely on foreign policy. That wasn't necessarily predictable based on his campaign rhetoric. If he had gone full on populist, tax increases for the rich, huge infrastructure program that puts, and he was talking about some of this stuff, then you might see more non kind of middle American white working class people hopping on board. But you're not. And the appeals that are keeping them on board are, I think that the draw is not so much economics as kind of cultural issues and so on. But anyway, so I don't know. I mean, reshuffling the teams, I don't know how that happens. I mean, I think it could move in the direction I'm describing.
Yeah.
I mean, Bernie Sanders is an interesting question. Suppose he became president. What's his constituency exactly? The caravan. But you say, like, it's like you said, right? I mean, what's your conspiracy theory about the right has a conspiracy theory about the caravan. I think if there's a plausible conspiracy theory about the caravan, it should come from the left, because this is just playing right into the Republicans' hand.
Yeah. I don't have a conspiracy theory, but it did put me in a conspiratorial kind of mood. When you first hear the story, like the first instinct is, okay, so this is obviously not what it looks like. What could it be apart from that? I only read like one kind of detailed article about it, about the organizer of this thing.
Is there an official organizer? So I had heard there were a couple of different people who started talking about it on social media. A couple of different people, I guess, in Honduras or what?
Yeah, well, the one, again, I read this in the Daily Beast, and you tell me if is that a reputable source?
Daily Beast is reputable. I mean, on foreign policy, I think more than is widely appreciated, it leans toward the neocon, but it's definitely Yeah, it's a reputable.
I wasn't happy with like the way article was written. There were like obvious like passages where the writer inserts his opinion without, you know, stating it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, the story they tell there is there's this guy, Bartolo Fuentes in Honduras, who had like a radio show about immigration, has history with immigration. The radio show was called Open Borders, I think, or Without Borders. And I guess he helped get together some of caravans that were way smaller previously, like organized people, disparate groups in a organized kind of group, but they were like maybe a couple of hundreds. And so he was doing that this time, and it was not supposed to be this huge thing, but then the government TV, or controlled by the government, influenced by the government TV, ran this segment on him, portraying him as he's making all these false promises. He wants to get a lot of people together. He's going to build this huge thing. And the way this article paints it is he was not planning to do that, but after the segment was run, a whole lot of people went like, oh, that's my chance.
So the Honduran government criticized him because part of the drift of this whole thing is anti-Honduran government, right? Because some of these people say they are fleeing some sort of repression or persecution.
That's right. Yeah. So apparently has been a big problem with immigration in Honduras. Like people are leaving the country all the time, and the government has been trying to, you know, change that.
So wait, this is a potentially great conspiracy theory. Are you suggesting that the Honduran government helped? And then, so now we'd be looking for a phone call from the White House to the Honduran government, right? Like a day before the Honduran government started criticizing them. Is that, I mean, you're in Russia. You should definitely go all out with the conspiracy theories. That's, they'll call me crazy if I espouse them, but.
My general take on conspiracy theories is there are definitely a whole bunch of attempted conspiracies almost in every story. Somebody's trying to do something, and most of the time none of this works, and you just have stupidity running the show or chance and things like that.
Well, it's certainly true that people attribute much more coherence to phenomena than often actually exists. I mean, like, I remember when I worked at the New Republic in Washington, like, we'd get these letters, like, connecting, like, different articles, like, we'd run that were supposedly part of some. Now, there was an ideology to New Republic. It was if people saw, like, you know, the owner was on foreign policy, was certainly neoconish, but so often the theories would be just like, you don't understand, we're just struggling to get out a weekly magazine, and we're just throwing stuff together. And, you know, I mean, there were ideologies for sure, but so often their theories were just wrong. Now on the caravan, though, I will say, I mean, Trump, another thing I've heard, so you're saying that criticism from the Honduran government actually gave it momentum. I've also heard that when Trump started criticizing it earlier, that helped it pick up momentum. It gave it publicity in Honduras and Mexico, whatever. And so more people became aware of it and joined it. I've heard that. And that's not a conspiracy. That's just Trump being Trump, like classic Trump, like understanding that arousing a reaction from the other side through criticism often plays into his hands. This is just a different way of that playing into his hands.
What do you think will happen when this thing reaches the border? And also, do you have a sense of what the people in the caravan are thinking is going to happen when they reach the border? I mean, when you're approaching a country, the president of which paints you as the barbarians, you know, approaching the walls when there's not a wall that he wanted to build.
Right.
I mean, you're not expecting a welcome, right?
Well, I heard a podcast about this there was a New York Times reporter who was down there with them. And she just said they just are not that politically tuned in. Like they're not that aware, at least they weren't at this point, that they're playing into Trump's hands. They're actually helping Donald Trump. And also that one thing they say is, well, they said we couldn't get across the border into Mexico. So no reason we can't get across the border into the United States. So there's a lot of, as of the time this report was filed, like yesterday, there was a lot of optimism among these people. I mean, it was kind of, one of them actually died, fell off a truck and died. And that apparently kind of dampened the spirits. But as for getting across the border, it sounds like they're optimistic. It also sounds, like they're not going to be here by the midterms. They're not going to reach the border by the midterms. I mean, I was confused a little because you hear them about them walking, but then you hear about them getting on vehicles and getting rides. But I gathered that enough of them are walking that the rides are just for people who are having trouble walking like 20 miles a day or something. So if that's the pace, they're not going to be anywhere near the border by the midterms. And so as for what happens then, it just matters a lot less after the midterms politically in America than it would before. But of course, it matters to the people. And yeah, Trump will. He'll pull out all the stops, I'm sure, too. But now, I think American law requires that pleas for asylum be processed.
Right.
But that's different from ruling favorably and letting them into the country.
Right, which, the straightforward scenario, if you have a whole lot of people kind of flood the system and you do have to process these applications, then you have to house them somewhere, and that's how camps appear, right? And that's
it could be a total mess. And I don't know if the numbers are going to grow a lot in Mexico. I don't know. Have they been growing in southern Mexico already?
I don't know.
Or is it going to remain kind of a Honduran thing?
They say that, again, in this article, they citing people who have done this before on a smaller scale, that these things usually start to splinter at the, so it's not going to be this huge, 5,000 people caravan, approaching the American border. At some point, they're going to start splintering into smaller groups. I haven't heard about this kind of story before, like a real big organized thing. Like it has the qualities of a political movement. And this guy who organized it, he is he's not a politician, I guess, but he is like a critic of the government in Honduras. And it's kind of confusing to me because there's like a phrase somewhere here. This is a battle, he said, between the government and the ones who want to fight for the truth and for a better country that people can live in. And I don't quite get how you fight for a better country by leaving the country.
Well, you guess you call attention to the excesses that drove the people out.
But anyway, so he is he's maybe not a politician, but a political agent, let's say, right? And he was, I think, captured and brought back to Honduras. He's not with the caravan anymore. And you said, people are joining this, they're optimistic. It has, I remember when there's a big protest that was not expected to happen in Russia. The feeling you get is oh shit, this is happening. I can either go, you don't necessarily need to know what it is that you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, or how you're going to behave, but there's something big happening in the middle of the city. So you go there because you feel you can't not be there.
Yeah.
And I feel that probably for many of the people who joined the caravan, it's a similar situation. This thing is going through my territory. I may stay here where the situation is not good and I've been unhappy about it for some time, or I can join this and see what it brings.
Well, apparently there are also parts of, I don't know whether that's more in Honduras or Mexico, where it's kind of perilous to be in a small group of migrants because there are criminals who will prey on you. So there's kind of a safety in numbers thing. Yeah. So people who've been planning to go, might think, well, this is a way to get to the border safely, and then we'll see what happens then.
Right. Or people who were kind of thinking of maybe going.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, it is, even though they apparently won't reach the border by the midterms, it is a wild card in the midterm elections because, the polls seem to show that the Democrats have a good chance of taking the lower house, not the Senate. But the big wild card is turnout. That's what the polls tend not to predict. If something happens that, gooses Republican turnout, and this is tailor-made for that, for Trump to say, their approach, especially if the numbers keep growing, because then it keeps being a story. It's like the numbers got bigger today. That's what, I wish somebody would say to these people, like, do you understand who you're helping here? Not to minimize the fact that they're fleeing for, these people have real issues they want to escape, whether they're economic or political or, personal. They're never trivial. It's not like people are going on vacation here, but it's, you can just see Trump, if the numbers are growing, saying, if the Democrats control Congress, they're going to let these people in. Of course, it's not true, but the whole thing, to get back to the question of like how bad things are getting polarization wise, there's just two different media systems now. He'll say things that aren't true, and most of the people who hear them will not ever encounter a reason not to believe him. Because
what did the Democrats say about this?
The Democrats have apparently wisely told the Democratic candidates, don't let him get you talking about this. Because the Democrats are in a tough position, because historically they are the party that says we need to hear these people out sympathetically, and the ones who have valid reasons for asylum, need to be granted asylum, and so on. So that's, if Democrats start talking about this, they can't suddenly start sounding like Donald Trump.
Right.
So what they're being told, I think, by, kind of party leaders is stay focused on healthcare, try to avoid saying a whole lot about this issue, which of course is, in general, is better advice than is appreciated when it comes to Trump. Don't take the bait, and unfortunately,
at the same time, if he's the only one talking about this, then he controls the narrative.
Well, yeah. Plus, he wants you to say things that then will get brought into the aforementioned right-wing media ecosystem as examples of why people on the left are dangerous. The problem is, it doesn't take that many ill-advised utterances from the left to fill, the news. It's like, well, here's the second part of the challenge is that, on both sides, the most egregious utterances from the other side are what get amplified on your side. You see it on the left too. Like on Twitter, it's like some person on the right says something reasonable. Well, that doesn't go all the way through left-wing Twitter. It's the craziest person saying the craziest thing. Up to a point. If they're literally crazy, maybe not. But so the system is now, giving each side the most negative possible view of the other side. And it's not always doesn't always take a big corporation like Fox News to do it, or like MSNBC.
Right.
It's happening because it's what gets you retweets, is calling attention to the most outrageous thing said on the other side. These are the dynamics of tribalism that are driving the system, toward greater polarization. I hope not toward actual conflict, although these bombs aren't encouraging either way, even if it's a false flag operation, not encouraging. It just shows you that whether it's a crazy on the left or crazy on the right, it's easy for a crazy person to command attention. Yeah. And the system is making more and more people crazy.
Yeah.
So this is why we must all be mindful. This is why a lot of us struggle with it. It's like just not checking every day the latest 538 estimate of how likely the Democrats are to take the House. You know, I'm trying not to check every day. I'm trying to be mindful and only check every other day.
Are you succeeding?
I'm keeping it down to once every 2 days.
Okay.
Which is not bad because it gets updated almost constantly.
I'd say still too often, but
yeah, it's too often, but we all just have to, you know, do what we are. I mean, man, during the Obama presidential elections, I was checking multiple times each day. These things get refreshed all the time. Mm-hmm. You know, the Real Clear Politics polling average. If I can keep it to checking one site every 48 hours, that's pretty minimal damage to my brain compared to what could happen.
You said about the party leaders tell the Democratic candidates to stay away from the issue. And I thought the other problem with the two-team thing, it's not just the political candidates are divided into two teams. The society itself is divided into the same two teams. And so even if the political candidates stay silent on a certain issue, well, the commentators are not going to stay silent, right? Some like popular liberals on Twitter are not going to stay silent.
Exactly. No, that's what I was talking about. It's like you can impose discipline on the candidates. And that actually is good because nothing's going to drive turnout like showing an actual candidate doing the thing you consider egregious. But you're exactly right. With all the commentators and the Twitter stars, it's like a competition to both depict the most extreme things they say and then say extreme things yourself, you know, within reason. Again, I mean, the crazies, certainly I'm more familiar with the left, the kind of crazy, out and out crazies and frauds on the left. It tends to become known among mainstream Twitter elites that they're crazies, but still it's the competition by and large is to highlight the extremes on the other side and to be extreme on your side within some limits. And that's why, you know, I was just talking to somebody yesterday. We were saying, I don't know, you know, again, I don't know how this ends. I don't know what it takes to reverse the basic tendency.
Do you have thoughts on what the citizenry's reaction should is it just something that you observe in the news and follow the story and hope for the better, or is there something that, I don't know, some stand you make or call your representative to do this or that, or what?
In order to accomplish what?
Well, just so the caravan story, is there something that the reader of the newsletter or whatever?
I'm not aware of a movement to call your congressional representative and tell them just to keep their mouth shut about this. I don't know, like a grassroots movement to stifle our politicians. That would certainly sometimes be useful. Maybe that's just like an STFU movement. It's like you're not helping.
There was a tweet. I was just impressed by Trump's tweet where I've seen this video before. It's like Obama before he's president talking about immigration. And he's like, we are a welcoming people, but we must uphold our laws. People need to go through the due process. It does sound like the rhetoric, the way the speech sounds, it's something that a person on the right could have said, about the importance of.
That. Yeah. Let me, I can't focus while Milo's scratching. So let me,
okay.
let me let him in. But yeah, I do have, so Trump tweeted Obama saying that, right?
Right. So I've seen this video before posted with this context, look how he sounds like a right-wing person. And so it's pointing out the hypocrisy. But Trump tweeted it.
Said, yeah, I agree with Obama.
Yeah, he's like, I 100%
which was a clever move because what the quote from Obama actually signifies in all of its fullness is the fact that contrary to what Trump claimed during the election campaign, Obama was pretty tough on immigration enforcement. And in fact, the numbers coming across the border declined during his administration and got to, a pretty low level. The big numbers are during the Bush years. The numbers coming across, certainly apprehended, coming across the border got lower and lower. If you looked at the graph, you'd go, well, so there was a crisis in the Bush years and then you got it under control. Obama was no slouch on immigration enforcement, but Trump doesn't want to say that, and he didn't say that, but he did use what Obama said about immigration to, it was uncharacteristic of Trump. I guess it must be like a midterm. I don't know what exactly he was trying to accomplish. Because in general, he loves to pour hate on Obama. See, Milo had disappeared when I went to check, and now he's scratching again. It's like Milo is he does this all the time, just messing with your head.